The light first appeared on the 11th night after Margaret Lorne buried her husband. Not in the house. Outside. In the field. It moved like a person walking, steady, deliberate, swaying ever so slightly, as if held by a hand. Only there was no one there. No wind. No footfall. Just the slow arc of the lantern's glow, moving in a perfect line from the edge of the woods to the old well behind her house. And then stopping. Margaret didn't scream. She'd done all her screaming in the days following Edgar's death. She simply stood at her window, watching the light. She knew the stories. Everyone in Elderbridge did. They called it Widow's Light, a lantern said to appear when the dead wanted something forgotten to be remembered. It hadn't been seen in over 30 years. She thought it was just folklore. But now, it was swaying beneath her orchard trees, without wind, without cause. And it had stopped exactly where Edgar used to sit when he wanted to be alone. She watched until morning. The lantern never moved again. At sunrise, it vanished. Not faded, blinked. One moment present. The next, gone. As if it had never been there. She stepped outside, walked to the well. No lantern. But something new had appeared. A single footprint, sunk deep in the soil beside the stone edge. It was wet. But there had been no rain. On the 12th night, the light returned. Same time. Same path. Only this time, it stopped closer, just 20 feet from her porch. And she could see more now. The lantern wasn't held. It was worn. Hung around something's neck. The glow revealed a shape behind it, not quite human, but upright. Covered in black cloth that didn't move with the breeze. No face, just layers of lace where features should be. And the lantern swayed forward once. As if in greeting. Or invitation. Margaret didn't open the door. But she whispered aloud, "What do you want?" The light pulsed. And from the air itself came an impossible sound. Drip, drip, drip. Like water falling into something deep and hollow. The sound her well had made before Edgar sealed it shut. On the 13th night, the light came to her porch. Margaret locked every window. Lit every candle. And still, the lantern came. She saw it through the glass. The figure standing in perfect stillness beside the front door, the glow reflecting in the handle. No knock. No voice. But the candles began to dim. One by one. As if something were inhaling their flames. Then, the dripping sound again. This time louder. Coming from beneath the floorboards. From where the well pipe once ran. From where Edgar had said, "Don't ever go down there again." That night, she dreamed of the lantern. But in the dream, she was the one holding it. And behind her trailed a wet rope. Tied to something she couldn't see, or wouldn't look at. Every step forward made the rope tug back. And a voice behind her whispered, "Don't forget what you helped bury." She woke in tears. But not from fear. From recognition. On the 14th night, the light didn't come from the woods. It came from inside the house. From the cellar door. Which she had never opened in 14 years. Which Edgar had always said was off limits. The door was open now. And a pale orange glow crept up the steps. Margaret stood at the top, heart hammering. The dripping sound was constant now, like a slow leak that had waited years to start again. She called down, "Who's there?" Silence. Then, from below, in her husband's voice, "We never finished the burial." She took the lantern from the hallway. Not the ghostly one. Her own, an old brass oil lamp from her father's time. She stepped down the cellar stairs. The light grew stronger the deeper she went. The cellar had changed. It was longer than she remembered. Damp. Walls breathing. Floor sloping downward as if the house's spine had softened in grief. And at the far end, a wooden door. One she had never seen. Half open. And behind it, the well. But this one wasn't dry. Water churned inside. Not fresh, but black. Smelling of rust and grave rot. And hanging above it, the lantern. the one that had walked the field. It dangled from an invisible hook, swaying gently, casting shadows against the damp walls. The rope it hung from wasn't tied to the ceiling. It led down into the water, pulled taut, heavy, as if someone was still holding the other end. Margaret approached. The dripping sound stopped. Only the lantern moved now. She reached for it. Her hand passed through. It wasn't there, only reflected. And in the water's surface, she saw Edgar, eyes open, mouth moving, but no sound. And behind him, something larger, watching her, something still attached to the rope. She stumbled back. The cellar door slammed shut behind her. The lantern pulsed once, twice, and went dark. And from the well came a word, spoken in a dozen voices. Tomorrow. The next morning, Margaret Lorne dug up her husband's grave. She didn't cry, didn't tremble, didn't even think about what she'd tell the groundskeeper. She simply packed a lantern, a spade, and her old oilskin coat, and walked to Elderbridge Cemetery before the sun rose. She knew it would be empty. The dead had already begun to move. Edgar's grave was too shallow. The dirt pulled back too easily, dry, as if untouched by rain in years. When she reached the coffin, it wasn't broken. It was open. The lid placed gently beside the hole. No body inside. Only a single object, the wedding rope. They had braided it together the day they married, red and gold, knotted 3 times, sealed in wax. But now it was blackened, damp, half unraveled, as if something had chewed its way through. And tied to one end, a bell, small, copper, unmarked, not rusted, just waiting. Margaret didn't take it home. She brought it back to the cellar. The door opened before she touched it. No key, no latch, only recognition. The steps below were darker now, the walls slick. Not stone anymore, but wood. Not cut wood, rooted, breathing, as if the cellar had grown overnight. She stepped down anyway, lantern in hand, rope slung over one shoulder, bell silent. For now, the well was full again, not of water, of reflections. They moved across its surface like insects, some hers, some Edgar's, some neither. Faces she didn't recognize, weeping and mouthing words in reverse. She knelt at the edge and lowered the copper bell. It did not sink. It floated just above the surface, spinning slowly, and the lantern above the well relit. No match, no oil, just presence. And from below, a voice she knew by heart. Do you remember what we buried before I died? Margaret shook her head. Tears stung her eyes, not from sorrow, from salt. The cellar air had turned briny, heavy. She looked into the water, saw Edgar again, but not the Edgar she buried. This one was older, eyes hollow, cheeks wet, and his mouth was moving again. You helped me seal it. You said we'd never speak of it. But the rope remembers. The lantern knows where we stood. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. Memories stirred at the edges. A night. A child's scream. The orchard. Something burning. And the well, always the well. A secret they promised would never reach the surface. But the bells don't forget. They ring, even if no one hears. Suddenly, the rope around her shoulder tightened. Pulled. Not from above. From below. She gripped the end. Too late. It yanked her forward, not into the well, but into the reflection. And for a moment, she fell into the night they buried it. The orchard. Years ago. Thunder. Mud. She stood beside Edgar, holding the braided rope. Wrapped around something. Someone. A child. Pale. Ill. Wrong. Not theirs. But somehow, theirs to bury. She saw her own hands pressing the child into the old well. Felt the knot tighten. Felt the whisper of the lantern extinguishing. And Edgar's voice. This isn't death. This is containment. Margaret screamed. She snapped out of the memory, gasping. She was back in the cellar, kneeling, soaked in brine. The rope lay slack now, the bell missing, and on the well wall someone had scratched a message into the stone. She's not asleep anymore. That night, the townspeople of Elderbridge heard the lantern again. But it wasn't outside Margaret's house. It was everywhere. Dozens of lights moving through fields, orchards, even the river. Not aimless. All walking the same crooked path, back toward Margaret's home. Back toward the rope. She watched from the window. Knew what they were. Not ghosts. Not the dead. But the unburied. Those whose names had been silenced. Whose memories had been sealed beneath stone and story. The rope had been a promise. Now it was a summons. She lit her own lantern, hung it on the porch, opened the door, and waited. As the lights approached, one by one, she recognized faces. A midwife who vanished in 71. A boy with a crooked smile and no birth records. A girl who had never spoken but had screamed the night they took her. Each one stepped forward, and each one held a knot. A piece of the old rope, still wet, still warm. Margaret whispered, "I remember now." The first light bowed. The others followed. The orchard trees bent, and the ground shifted. The ground cracked beneath Margaret's feet. Not from earthquake. From breathing. The soil in the orchard pulsed as if something below was waking. Something with ribs made of roots and a heartbeat of bells. The lights surrounded her now. Dozens of lanterns, each swaying in perfect rhythm, held by figures that were not fully there, remembered, not living. They didn't speak. But the knots they held pulsed with warmth. The same rope she and Edgar had used to seal the well. Now unraveling. The orchard groaned. Branches twisted. Apples turned black and dropped with wet thuds. The ground split where the trees were oldest, revealing steps beneath the soil, as if the orchard had grown over something hidden for years. A cellar, but deeper. Much deeper. Carved into stone Margaret didn't recognize. And from within it, the lantern light grew brighter. Only now it was blue. Like gas flame. Like cold memory. And Margaret understood, this was no longer a haunting. It was a procession. And she was being led to what had been left unfinished. The first of the lights descended. The rest followed. Without command. Without fear. Margaret went last. Lantern in hand. Rope slung across her shoulder like a confession she had waited years to speak aloud. The stone walls below were carved with names. Thousands. Some familiar. Some ancient. Some yet unborn. And beside each name, a knot. Some frayed. Some still tight. And some coming undone. The chamber at the bottom was circular. At its center, a tree. But no tree that could grow from this world. Its bark was black glass. Its branches twisted metal. And its leaves, bells. Small and silent. Each one shaped like a tear that had never fallen. And hanging from the lowest bough, the final knot. The one Margaret had tied with Edgar. The one meant to keep her quiet. She stepped forward. The lantern stayed behind, forming a circle of flickering witness. Her hand reached for the knot. It pulsed once, cold and knowing. And from the tree, a single bell rang. Not loud. Not even sound, exactly. But memory. She was back in the orchard, years ago. The night of the burial. The child, not hers, not Edgar's, screaming in a language neither of them knew. Hands bound in the rope. Eyes black as oil. And Edgar, weeping, repeating the same phrase. We were supposed to keep her asleep. Not kill. Not hide. Contain. Because she wasn't alone. She was a vessel. And whatever she carried, it was still down there. Still waiting. Still listening. Margaret awoke kneeling at the tree's roots. The knot now untied in her hands. The bells in the branches all trembling. and the blue lantern light dimming. But in the quiet, something else moved. From beneath the tree, a voice, small, clear, childlike. "You remember now." A girl stepped from the roots. 8, maybe 9. Barefoot. Eyes still black, but no longer empty. They shimmered. Reflected every face of every lantern still standing. She was not just a child. She was all of them. The ones buried in secret. The ones mourned in silence. The ones never named. Margaret trembled. "I didn't know." "You did." "I was told." "You obeyed." Silence. And then, "Will you do it again?" Margaret's hands bled from gripping the rope too tightly. She dropped it, took the lantern in both palms, raised it toward the child. "I won't seal you again." The girl blinked. Then, for the first time, smiled. But not with joy. With release. The orchard shook. Roots tore through stone. The tree split open, light pouring from within, and behind the girl, a door. Not wooden. Not metal. A door made of unspoken names. Thousands of them. Each one softly glowing. Waiting to be said aloud. The girl turned back. Looked at Margaret. "You may leave. But your light stays with me." Margaret understood. She removed her lantern's flame. Handed it to the child. It vanished into her chest like breath returning. The bells in the trees stopped trembling. And somewhere, far above, the first sunrise in 14 nights crept across Elder Bridge. But down here, the orchard remained dark. Until the next lantern returned. Margaret Lorne stood at the edge of a world no one had meant to return to. Behind her, the open orchard, its trees stripped of fruit, their branches hung with bells that no longer rang. Before her, the girl. The child once buried, once bound. Now burning with a quiet flame taken from Margaret's own lantern. A light that moved without shadow, because it did not come from fire, but from remembrance. The procession had ended. The lights had gone. Only Margaret remained, and the door within the tree still stood open. The girl stepped aside. "You don't have to look," she said. Margaret hesitated. "But if you don't," the girl continued, "someone else will. Someone who won't know what to do." So Margaret walked forward. Through the doorway. Into the dark. What lay beyond was not cellar, nor crypt. It was a corridor of earth and root, endless, curling like the inside of a conch shell. On every wall, ropes. Tied in knots. Hanging in silence. Some tight. Some frayed. Some unraveling before her eyes. Each one hummed softly. Each one carried a memory someone tried to bury. And all of them were connected. At the center, a hollow chamber. And in its middle, a mirror. Black glass. Cracked. Breathing. She stepped in front of it. Expected her reflection. Instead, she saw them. All the others. The children. The forgotten. The unburied. They stood behind her in the glass, watching. And as one, they said, "The light was never meant to seal. It was meant to guide." The mirror shimmered, bled upward, became a second door. And from within it, she heard a new voice. One that chilled her. "Edgar. Maggie. If you open that, you'll let it all in again." She turned. The mirror now showed him. But not as she remembered. Younger. Pale. Face wet with the rot of time. Hands still holding the rope they'd tied together. He looked at her as though begging. But his eyes were empty. And the girl's voice came from beside her once more. He was the first one to lie. Margaret raised her hand. Touched the mirror. It was warm. It pulsed. And she understood. This wasn't a mirror at all. It was a veil. What was on the other side had always been watching. Not evil. Not vengeful. Just waiting for someone to remember. Someone who wouldn't bind it again. She whispered, "We're not sealing anything anymore." The mirror cracked. then bloomed into flame. She didn't feel it burn. She felt it lift. The light poured upward, through the roots, through the cellar, through the orchard. And across Elder Bridge, windows flickered. Lamps relit. Candles reignited in homes long thought abandoned. And one by one, ropes untied themselves. Not just hers. All of them. All the promises meant to silence the truth. All the knots tied by guilt, fear, and forgetting. All undone. Margaret awoke on her porch. At dawn. The lantern still beside her, though its flame was gone. The orchard behind her was quiet. But she felt it, open. Not ominous. Honest. And in the breeze, a sound like 100 small bells chiming in harmony. No footsteps. No figures. No ghosts. Only light. She rose. Walked to the well. It had dried completely. Stone clear, clean. A place now meant for planting. She dropped the final piece of rope inside. Turned. And walked back to her house. That night, no lantern appeared. And for the first time in 15 nights, Margaret slept without dreaming.